Namaskar, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Jha. You're watching Perspective, wishing all our viewers a very happy new year. For all of us, 1st of January means the day to look forward to a joyful and happy year ahead. This year, alongside celebrating New Year, we will give you a different perspective on the significance of this day in Indian history. Well, it was on the 1st of January 1862 that the Indian Penal Code became operational. IPC, as you all may know, is the official criminal code of the country that covers substantial part of criminal law. Drafted in 1860 by the first Law Commission of pre-independent India, IPC has 511 sections across 23 chapters, providing the list of crimes along with their definitions and punishments. Over the years, several amendments have been made to the IPC. A number of acts have been passed to supplement it as well. But as the premier code for criminal law, it continues to be a model piece of legislation. And this is what has also led to increased demands on the need for a thorough revision of IPC to meet the changing needs of the 21st century. So what are the kind of reforms that are being spoken about, the steps taken in this regard, and an overview into the history of the Indian Penal Code is what we will try and bring before you in perspective today. And for this, joining me are three distinguished personalities. Let me first introduce them to you. I'm joined on the program today by Dr. Amar Patnaik. He is a Member of Parliament in Rajya Sabha. He represents the BJD. Mr. Satya Jain, Additional Solicitor General of India, and Ms. Rekha Aggarwal, Advocate Supreme Court. I welcome all my guests to Sansad TV and also wish you all a very happy new year. Rekha ji, so as we mark 160 years to the day since IPC became operational, let me begin by asking you first, if you could give us an overview into the history of how the IPC came into being and how it continues to remain significant and relevant even today.
Thank you, Teena, and very happy New Year to you also. Indeed, it is a very important day as far as Indian laws are concerned, that in 1860, the Indian Penal Code first came into existence. And of course, it goes back to the pre-colonial era. And pre-independence era, it has got a colonial, tradition and heritage, a rather very colonial flavor to it.
Yes.
And it has, of course, been the very fact that now we are in 2022, and the law which has been made in 1860, it still holds good as far as criminal jurisprudence is concerned, along with the Criminal Procedure Code and the Indian Evidence Act. These three acts, taken together, are the foundation of any criminal trial in a country. And indeed, this law has seen many changes over the years, and some changes still need to be made, in keeping with the times, particularly the law of sedition.
Absolutely.
But still, I think that a lot of thinking has gone into it, probably covers everything under any crime which could be possible against the human body, against the state, against the properties, against public tranquility, etc. So I do think that it is a very all-encompassing piece of legislation, and no criminal trial can even start, without the existence of the Indian Penal Code. So I think that one should respect the law of the land, first of all. And it is rather sad that I must admit that as a lawyer, I feel that most people have scant respect for law. And the three laws which I just mentioned, Indian Penal Code, Criminal Procedure Code, and Indian Evidence Act, without which no case can start or conclude. It takes a very long time in our criminal jurisprudence for any trial to get concluded, and that is why probably whenever a crime is concerned, or any criminal case is concerned, most people actually, if I may say so, that they think that they can get away with murder, and literally also. So I think that some changes do need to be taken along with the times, and probably it could be made a little faster. The criminal trials in a country could probably be made a little faster. Having said that, I do think that it is time that people had more, realization about what I feel is that most people are very ignorant about our basic laws.
Yes.
So I think that it is time that there was more awareness about our laws, particularly the criminal laws of our country, so that we have a peaceful society where everybody can live happily and safely.
Certainly. Mr. Jain, let me come to you. And since Rekha ji spoke about awareness on criminal laws, there are two terms which the common people often hear about, the IPC and the CRPC. So if for our viewers, if you could simplify, what is the distinction between IPC and CRPC? And particularly since we are talking about IPC today, despite it being so archaic, how has it able to not just remain alive, but also flourish in many ways? If you could also take us through its key strengths that has helped it, remain the bedrock of criminal jurisprudence in India.
See, as my learned colleague has just now explained, Indian Penal Code, though enacted in 1860, still as relevant as it was when it was enacted. And it is one of the best legislations that any human mind can think of. And credit goes to those who enacted it, that in one go, they could think of all crimes that any human mind could even think of, and what to talk of even committing that. Right A to Z, almost all crimes that could be committed have been visualized in the Indian Penal Code. I remember when we used to go to films, when I was in school, there used to be a trial, Tazirate Hind ki Dafa 302 ke. So, we couldn't understand what is this Tazirate Hind. And when I became a lawyer, a student of law, then we came to know that it is in fact Indian Penal Code, which ordinarily in Hindi films they call Tazirate Hind ki Dafa so and so ke mutabak ye saja di jati. So far as the CRPC, IPC, and Indian Evidence Act is concerned, any lawyer who has to start practice on the criminal side, first thing he has to do is he should have in the library Indian Penal Code, CRPC, and the Evidence Act. If you do not have CRPC, if you do not have IPC, with all respect, I can say, right from the trial court to Supreme Court, maybe a junior lawyer, maybe a senior lawyer, you cannot do justice to the system. Indian Penal Code visualizes, thinks of, imagines, and describes the offences that can be committed against any person or state, property, etc., everything. So this basically deals with, if you do this, you will be punished for this much time. If you, for give an example, now there is a cases, I mean, a lot of things are being said about crime against women. Suppose you just heard the sentiment of a woman, the section is different. You heard the modesty of a woman, the section is different. You touch her, section is different. All crimes that you can commit or think of, all have been described in the Indian Penal Code. And I am very happy that Indian Penal Code is remembered even orally, not by the people who are involved in the judicial trial system, the lawyers, judges, and all that. You go to a police station, an SHO, an ASI, by and large, even they are also aware of it.
Yes.
The moment you tell that this thing has been done, वो आपको हिंदी में बोलेंगे इसमें दफा 353 लगेगी या इसमें दफा 365 लगेगी. It has gone so deep into the total criminal trial system. So this is the basic, if I may say that, the basic book which deals with the crime as well as the punishment.
Okay, Dr. Patnaik. So, as Mr. Jain says, if it has become so deep, it has become, a part of our criminal justice system, it is as significant as it was and relevant even today. Why is there such a strong push for reforms then? What are the contentious areas where reforms are being spoken about? In fact, in the just concluded winter session, the government informed Parliament that the Committee on Reforms has been set up, wherein suggestions have been sought from various stakeholders.
Thank you, Teena, and once again, Happy New Year to all the panelists here and to you, to all the viewers. Yeah, so I think when we discuss this in the Parliament from time to time, whenever there is there is a serious offence which has been committed anywhere in the country. I remember the Hyderabad incident or any such incident, any such incident. This issue comes up for debate in the Parliament, and the most important question that comes up is whether there are two aspects here. One is the penalty being prescribed there in the system, the offence having been mentioned over there. The other one is the certainty of punishment. I think the certainty of punishment is a bigger deterrent in the criminal jurisprudence. And that is, I think, where it's basically referring to the delays in the judicial system. So that is what gets discussed. So it is not really the IPC which gets discussed in terms of its relevance, but what happens is its implementation which is giving rise to delays. and therefore people, the perpetrators of crime, they feel that they do not have there's not enough detriment against them. That's one. The numbers two is that I think we passed the transgender law, for example. There is still a discordance between what we have passed in the parliament has passed, and the IPC. So there are a number of areas where I think the laws have to be aligned and synchronized, particular sections. And the third important is the rising case of cyber crimes, the crimes related in the technology space. And that's what is going to increase much more. Now, whether the IPC can address these issues, I give full credit. I completely agree with what the previous panelists have said, that the people who wrote this were so far-sighted that human life and property associated with it, everything conceivable has been addressed. But I think as technology has evolved, there have been 77 amendments, but I think there are still areas in the technology space where we have separate acts, but IPC itself, I think, has to be strengthened. And last but not the least is the fact that in the digital economy and in an economy which is growing, there are often, the industry bodies keep saying that you must decriminalize certain offences. Now, instead of doing it in those particular acts, I think we need to have a relook at the provisions in the IPC itself as to whether those particular provisions also need to be changed. Mm-hmm. And these are, I think, the areas in which the debates take place. And I must say that it is, as any law should be, it's a lively thing. The Supreme Courts and the constitutional courts keep on interpreting and even deleting provisions, modifying provisions in the IPC. So it's a good thing that's happening, but the basic problem still remains is the dispensation of justice, Absolutely. Which goes beyond the IPC.
When we say strengthening the IPC, do we mean just adding certain acts which strengthen the IPC altogether, which supplement it in more ways than one? Or do we mean replacing it altogether, as there's been a PIL in the Supreme Court as well, filed earlier this year, which calls for a one nation, one code? Now, how feasible is this idea, something which has become a part of our criminal justice system? Is it possible to replace it altogether and have one new code which is being pitched in the Supreme Court as well?
Yeah, see, the thought process, I think, is something which I like, because if you have everything together at one place, then the interpretation of law and the law availability of law to the common people would become easier, less costly, less expensive. Because one law not being in sync with another law, those cases will reduce. But whether it is feasible or not in a country the size of India, the kind of cases that emerge in different provinces all over the state, I think that's something which will be difficult to manage. I have a feeling that like the labor code, so which we reduced from 46 to about 4, the initial attempt could be to see if some of these aggregations could be done, but not at, I think, one go for one particular the criminal law in the entire country. It may be very difficult to work out a code like that.
Okay, let me take the question on feasibility to Mr. Jain. What do you think? Because if there are PILs in the Supreme Court, there is a case also being considered by the legislature on bringing about reforms in the IPC. Is it feasible to actually replace something which is inherent of our system? It was established in 1860, but in the manner in which all three of you have suggested, IPC is the bedrock of our criminal jurisprudence. And to replace it altogether in a matter of few months by bringing in just a few laws, how practical is that, Mr. Jain?
Yeah, I don't think that it is, to be very straight and to the point, it is very feasible, even desirable, to have IPC altogether changed by any other enactment. I don't think in the present system it will be possible. Otherwise also, those who say one nation, one code, so IPC is applicable to the entire nation, to the entire country. No state is exception to it. Whether you are being tried in Nagaland or in Gujarat or in Punjab or in Sikkim, you are being tried under the IPC, all criminal cases. See, in fact, what is happening is this, as my learned parliamentarian colleague said it, the delay in the administration of justice is not because of the IPC. It is not because of the IPC. It is because of different reasons. As you put a question to me before, CRPC is the Criminal Procedure Code, which
Absolutely.
prescribes the procedure for trial of the cases. As a matter of fact, I personally feel as a lawyer that if we have to go for amendments, you may have to go for amendments first at the CRPC
Yes.
to avoid delays,
Yes.
to avoid the delays in the trial. Third, see, there is a very strange thing in the criminal jurisprudence. Very strange thing. If there is a doubt, you will be booked. There is a doubt that you committed a murder, you will be arrested, put behind the bars. If there is a doubt, ultimately you will be acquitted. So doubt is sufficient to book you. Doubt is sufficient for your acquittal. We have to reconcile somewhere. People, I mean, I remember our former Chief Justice of Punjab Haryana High Court, who was transferred to Bihar as Chief Justice in 80s. When he came after retirement from there, he told us in a discussion, he says, when I was sitting as the Chief Judge with another honorable judge in the division bench, a murder appeal came to us after 15 years. It was a case for acquittal, and the man had undergone 15 years in jail. He says, my learned colleague sitting with me said, Your Lordship, why to acquit him? Now let us release him by saying that already undergone. He says, no, it's against the very concept of the criminal jurisprudence. These things are happening not in one case. In a number of cases, it is not because of IPC. It is because of the delay in the criminal system, some attributable to CRPC, some being attributed to the people who are trying it, some to the corruption, connivance of with all respect, I am saying, some police officers with the criminals, and in certain cases, with all respect to the judicial officers, now in 1 or 2% cases, even the conduct of some of the judicial officers is coming under cloud. I have no hesitation in saying that.
Rekha ji, so a very important point that Mr. Jain made earlier was that, you know, the IPC makes no exception for states. It is meant to be implemented in the same manner across India. Why then, for similar crimes, do we see different kinds of punishments being handed over? Is there a problem in the way it is being interpreted?
Are you talking about the sentence or the fine which is imposed in a particular case? Because the punishment is the same, as Mr. Jain also very clearly said, that the Indian Penal Code is applicable throughout the country.
But for crimes which are not described in the IPC, for crimes like, you know, what we have seen recently, incidents of lynching, incidents of maybe, say, honor killings across states. So crimes are of similar nature, but across states, what we see is the punishments, the manner in which, you know, they're being treated by the police, it differs from state to state. So is there a problem in the way it is being interpreted?
No, not at all. It is not a question of the interpretation being there, because as Mr. Jain and the other panelist, Dr. Patnaik, also very clearly said, we have one country, one nation, and we have one law. There can be no different interpretation or different application of it. The problem comes that, you know, where the maximum sentence is concerned. So in a particular case, the maximum sentence or the maximum punishment may not be given, because we have a judgment, and after that there is the argument on the point of sentence. So, in the point of sentence, at the point when the lawyer, who is the defense attorney, you know, he's pressing for a lesser punishment for his client, at that time the punishment or the number of years or the fine, because every section of the Indian Penal Code prescribes a minimum as well as a maximum sentence and a maximum fine. So, probably in those cases, you know, in the cases of honor killings and lynching, etc. You know, the fine may be it may be less in one state and it may be more in another, but not because the law prescribes it, but because at the point of sentence, the judge may give a lesser, a fine or a lesser number of years of imprisonment. That could be the reason why there could be a different punishment or a different fine, even though the section or the crime that has been committed is just the same.
Absolutely.
So it is a question of interpretation or the gravity of the offense which decides the punishment as well as the fine that has to be imposed on a criminal.
Okay. Dr. Patnaik, you wanted to add something, sir?
That answers.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to whatever Madam was saying, that, you know, for example, the history, the criminal antecedent of the accused, the context in which the crime has been committed, these are two different things which will be different from X to Y, event to event, or offense to offense. So even though the section is right and the minimum, and since the minimum and maximum is there, so the adjudicator, that the judge decides whether he is an habitual offender, whether this is for the first time he is doing, what has been his criminal antecedent. Then another important thing is that whether he is doing along with a group of people, the extent of doubt that is being created, or the less of doubt, whatever is being created. So all these factors are important, and that is left to the judiciary, that is left to the judge, and it happens all over the world. It is not that it is only happening in this country, because it is very important that the purpose of law is not just to punish; it is also to reform. So it is both the things are important. You have to see it in as a whole. And therefore, for the same crime, maybe in a different, the accused may be getting different level of punishment in different situations at different occasions.
Okay. Dr. Jain, another area where the reforms have been spoken about, there have been suggestions as well which have been given to the Home Ministry, or which the Home Minister spoke about. In fact, he hinted, he didn't clearly say, was, on certain areas obviously related to new age crimes, which do not find mention in the IPC, but also regarding preventing misuse of certain sections by both the perpetrators as well as we can say those who are part of the justice delivery system, right from the police to courts to judges, lawyers. It involves everyone. So to prevent misuse, misinterpretations of different sections of the IPC, what is your take? What are the kind of reforms that you would suggest in the times to come?
See, let's not forget that the law is the evolving system, evolving pattern. There will not be a day when you say now all laws are 100% perfect. There's no need of any amendment or improvement in any law. That I think they will never come. Every day you face a new situation, and every day there are new problems, and every day there are new solutions also. Now, I think indirectly you were referring, when you were putting earlier question, to certain other laws which add to the provisions of the IPC, not directly but indirectly, like the TADA Act, like the Prevention Against Corruption Act, like the Terrorist Activities Act. I think they are basically the extension or elaboration of the IPC. The basic difference between those acts and the IPC, to my mind, is that those are crimes committed by such experts, I will use that word, or who are the people who are, you are not able to catch them by the normal laws, Evidence Act or CRPC. For them, special provisions have been made. But there also, in few cases, sentence is more than the prescribed by the IPC, because that is a special situation. For example, you arrest a terrorist from Pakistan. For example, you arrest a person who is smuggling drugs from Pakistan to India. If you try him by the normal procedure, CRPC, IPC, you may not be able to take the trial to the logical end. So for that, special provisions have been made. So far as the definitions amendments are concerned, because the criminal trials are increasing in the country. The crimes are being committed now in different new forms also, which you can't imagine. Daily you keep on getting messages on your telephones. Your mobile has won $90,000 prize. Send your Aadhaar card number, send your PIN card number,
Yes.
send your so and so. And many innocent people do not even know.
Yes.
They boost off that, look here, I have won this prize. I will be getting $10 lakh very shortly, and everything will be over. The next day, man comes to know that, but to talk of the $10 lakh, whatever 10,000 he was having, even that has also gone. So for that purpose, there is a constant need of reviewing various provisions of the IPC, various sections of the even CRPC also, and even small things. I say, for example, buy a speeding car. Nowadays, that trend is increasing. A rich man, maybe son of a filmy hero or a politician or judge or bureaucrat, you kill a man by over speed driving of your car. The man is killed. 10 people are killed. 5 people are killed. You go to police station, get bail in the evening. The people have been killed by the driver, by the son. Law IPC permits you, CRPC permits you that even the SHO can release him on bail. Why?
Can give you a bail.
Why not the person concerned should be tried for murder,
Yes.
or attempt to murder at least? Why should he not be sent to jail? Why should he not be sent to bar? But there are many suggestions which are coming, interpretations also, with the advancement of technology, with the advancement of a new judgment coming every day. Now, for example, this NDPC Act, in one case, Supreme Court said, don't give a bail, should not be otherwise in criminal law, bail is the exception, jail is the exception, bail is the law. But in the NDPC Act, Supreme Court also says, PMLA also says, no, don't be liberal in giving bail to these accused. Now, in Aryan case, one judge, the trial court says, he is not entitled for bail. High Court says he is totally entitled for bail. These are the issues which I think need consideration. Let there be, you have rightly put, one trial, one approach for all the accused. Not that if you are an MP or an MLA or the son of any important person, you will get bail within 2 days, 3 days by engaging a very senior lawyer. And if you are son of a peon, even if you have not committed any offense, you will be in jail for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years.
Okay, Rekha ji, one final question from you, and taking on from what Mr. Jain said, that law should be equal for everyone and there should be no distinction between the common man, the VIPs as well. One of the views that has come in from stakeholders is that going forth, when we talk about reforms, the emphasis should be, on shifting from punitive deterrence to reformation, actually working for the welfare of particularly those who are disadvantaged. What's your view on this?
I think that would be the day when we can say that we've got what is called a Ram Rajya or a utopian society. Certainly, I think we should have a more reformative approach and not just a punitive and punishing approach. And ultimately, no discussion about any law can be complete, without remembering our constitution, and the fundamental rights that every Indian citizen has. And one of the biggest advantages or the biggest important fundamental right, that is a right of being heard, that nobody can be punished unheard. But in that, so whether you're not only talking about justice for the accused, but also for the justice for the complainant. Even the prosecutrix has a right.
Absolutely.
So that is one of the discussions that had recently, emerged in one of those sexual offences cases which had, hit the media trials. So I think that one way of looking and reforming a society is that I think some trials are what we are seeing as media trials are happening, which have a long, impact even upon the judicial mind. And as our ex-CGI recently said in an interview, that judges don't fall from heaven. So I think that, we have to have a more positive approach, and a day should come when we should be having a more holistic approach, to the entire legal system, whether it's the civil trials or the criminal trials which take place. And since our criminal jurisprudence also says that let 99 accused persons go scot-free, but one innocent person should not be punished.
Absolutely,
So
and that
how
is
do we
where the
entire
case
thing?
for reforms becomes very, very significant and important. Suggestions have been coming in from different stakeholders on how to ensure speedy justice. But I think we'll have to wait and watch and see what are the kind of reforms that actually see the light of the day as far as IPC is concerned. I'm running short of time. I'll have to wind up the debate, the discussion on the show today. Thank you once again to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting across your thoughts before us and our viewers. Thank you once again. It was a pleasure having you on the program on such a wonderful discussion. And once again, I wish all of you a very happy new year on behalf of the entire Sansad TV family. So that's it from us on this edition of Perspective today. Thank you once again, viewers, for your time, and have a happy, healthy new year as well.